The paradox of the information age. We are living in an age of unprecedented access to information. Every second, billions of people share, post, search, and consume knowledge at a rate unimaginable even a few decades ago. The smartphone has become a portable library. The internet, an endless archive of human thought. In theory, this should be the golden age of enlightenment, a time when truth, wisdom, and understanding flourish like never before. Yet the opposite has occurred. The modern world, despite being the most connected and informed in history, has become a stage where ignorance, vanity, and stupidity are glorified. This paradox, the explosion of information alongside the collapse of wisdom, defines our era. We possess tools of immense intellectual power, but use them for shallow amusement. Our attention, fragmented and restless, drifts from meme to meme, headline to headline, outrage to outrage. We scroll endlessly but learn nothing deeply. The modern individual is not starved of data, but drowned in distraction. The tragedy lies not in the existence of foolishness, it has always existed, but in its celebration. Where once intelligence and reflection were admired, now impulsiveness and emotional spectacle dominate. Society rewards not those who think, but those who entertain. Wisdom has become unfashionable, and stupidity has been rebranded as authenticity. We call ignorance being real, and arrogance confidence. The wise are dismissed as boring, the foolish are elevated as relatable heroes of a superficial culture. The death of the wise voice. In past centuries, the wise were sought after. Socrates, Confucius, Buddha, Marcus Aurelius, Rumi. Such figures represented the human quest for meaning. Their teachings guided civilizations, influencing how people understood morality, truth, and purpose. But in the modern world, the wise voice has been silenced, not through persecution, but through irrelevance. It competes with viral dances, celebrity gossip, and political propaganda. The philosopher must now fight for attention with influencers and marketers. Wisdom no longer trends. Even education, the supposed guardian of intellect, has been commercialized and diluted. Schools and universities often teach students what to think, not how to think. The goal is not understanding but employability. The result is a generation well-informed yet poorly wise, people who can access any fact instantly but cannot interpret it meaningfully. Information without reflection. The internet has democratized information but devalued understanding. A random post on social media can carry as much visibility as a peer-reviewed scientific paper. In the noise of the digital world, the thoughtful are drowned out by the loud. We mistake visibility for truth, confidence for competence, and simplicity for insight. As philosopher Bertrand Russell once warned, the trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure, and the intelligent are full of doubt. The modern world has turned this imbalance into a spectacle, rewarding the cocksure with followers and fame. Wisdom demands patience, humility, and silence, the very qualities modern life discourages. The wise take time to think. The modern world punishes slowness. To pause is to fall behind. To reflect is to lose relevance. Everything must be instant. News, emotions, opinions. And in this rush, wisdom withers. The wise person, who once stood as a lighthouse in the storm, now seems like an outdated relic. Too quiet for the algorithm, too deep for the feed. The glorification of stupidity. The glorification of stupidity is not an accident. It is a product of systems designed to profit from distraction. Media corporations, advertisers, and political strategists understand that an unthinking public is easier to control. Shallow entertainment is addictive. Critical thought is exhausting. Thus, stupidity becomes not just tolerated but marketed. Reality shows reward foolishness with fame. Politicians weaponize ignorance to gain power. Algorithms promote outrage because it drives engagement. The result is a society where thinking deeply feels unnecessary, even undesirable. In such a world, wisdom dies quietly, not with violence but with neglect. The wise are not silenced by censorship but by indifference. They are drowned out by the roar of triviality. The philosopher, the teacher, the thoughtful writer, they still exist, but few listen. We no longer seek wisdom, because we no longer recognize its value. The need for a renaissance of thought, yet all is not lost. The death of wisdom is not irreversible. Every age of darkness has given birth to its thinkers, poets, and rebels who challenge mediocrity. In recognizing our collective foolishness, we take the first step toward reclaiming wisdom. The task before us is not to destroy modernity, but to humanize it. To use technology, education, and communication not as tools of vanity, but as instruments of truth. The modern world can still be enlightened, but only if it learns again to value silence over noise, depth over speed, reflection over reaction. This essay, therefore, seeks to understand the disease of modern stupidity, not to mock it, but to diagnose it. It explores how a civilization that once worshipped wisdom has come to glorify ignorance, and how we might begin the long journey back to thoughtfulness. Historical context: when wisdom was revered. To understand why the modern world glorifies stupidity, we must first remember a time when wisdom was sacred. In earlier civilizations, wisdom was not merely admired, it was the foundation of life itself. It guided rulers, shaped laws, inspired religions, and defined what it meant to be human. The wise were not entertainers or public figures, they were custodians of truth. Their purpose was not to gain followers, but to illuminate the path toward meaning and virtue. The Age of the Sage. In ancient societies, from Greece and Egypt to India and China, wisdom was considered a divine gift. The wise man or woman was seen as a bridge between the human and the eternal, between confusion and clarity. In Greece, the philosopher was revered as one who pursued philosophia, literally the love of wisdom. Socrates walked the streets of Athens, asking questions that forced people to examine their own beliefs. He did not seek fame. In fact, his humility led to his death, for he refused to compromise truth for comfort. Plato later immortalized Socrates, turning his teacher's sacrifice into a timeless symbol of intellectual integrity. In ancient China, Confucius sought harmony through moral education and reflection. His teachings emphasized virtue, humility, and respect, qualities that today seem almost alien in public discourse. Similarly, Lao Tzu, the mystical author of the Tao Te Ching, taught that wisdom lies in simplicity and inner peace, not in competition or noise. In India, sages and mystics pursued jnana, knowledge, and moksha, liberation, as the highest goals of human existence. The wise were not defined by wealth or fame, but by detachment and insight. Across civilizations, wisdom was inseparable from the sacred. It demanded self-discipline, humility, and contemplation. The wise person was expected to think before speaking, to understand before judging, to act after reflection. It was a way of life, not a profession. The classical ideal, knowledge as virtue. For the ancients, knowledge was not power, it was virtue. The purpose of learning was to become a better human being, not a more efficient machine. In Plato's Republic, the philosopher king is the ideal ruler, precisely because he seeks truth above personal gain. Aristotle taught that phronesis, practical wisdom, was essential for moral action. To know what is good was not enough, one had to act according to it. This connection between wisdom and virtue was the moral core of classical civilization. A wise person was not simply one who knew, but one who lived rightly. Ignorance was not just intellectual weakness, it was a moral failing. It meant living without purpose or understanding. Compare this with today's world, where knowledge is often stripped of morality and used for profit or manipulation. The ancients saw wisdom as light, the modern world treats it as decoration. The religious age, wisdom as divine truth. During the Middle Ages, wisdom became deeply intertwined with faith. In Christianity, Judaism, and Islam alike, wisdom was regarded as a reflection of divine order. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, says the Book of Proverbs, a reminder that true understanding begins with humility before the unknown. Islamic civilization produced scholars like Al-Ghazali, Ibn Sina, Avicenna, and Ibn Rushd, Averroes, who sought harmony between faith and reason. They preserved and expanded the philosophical traditions of Greece, showing that knowledge could serve both God and humanity. In medieval Europe, monasteries and early universities were sanctuaries of learning. To be a scholar was to serve truth, not wealth. Even the Renaissance, which revived classical humanism, retained this sacred respect for wisdom. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Erasmus saw knowledge as a path to beauty and moral awakening. The pursuit of understanding was an act of reverence. The Enlightenment, the birth of reason. The Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries marked another turning point. Thinkers like Voltaire, Descartes, and Kant challenged superstition and tyranny, declaring that human reason could liberate humanity. It was an age of progress and intellectual courage. For a while, wisdom and reason walked hand in hand. The scientific revolution expanded our knowledge of the universe, while philosophers debated ethics, freedom, and human dignity. But the Enlightenment also planted the seed of a dangerous illusion, that knowledge alone, without morality, humility, or reflection, was enough. Humanity began to worship reason as an idol, forgetting that reason without wisdom can become cruelty disguised as progress. The same rationality that cured diseases would one day build bombs. From reverence to rejection. As industrialization transformed the world in the 19th century, wisdom lost its sacred status. The new gods were progress, speed, and efficiency. Factories replaced monasteries. Businessmen replaced philosophers. The wise became irrelevant to a world obsessed with production and profit. By the 20th century, the rise of mass media and consumerism completed the shift. Knowledge became a commodity, sold like any other product. People no longer asked, "Is it true?" but rather, "Does it sell?" The wise voice, slow and deliberate, was drowned out by the noise of marketing, politics, and entertainment. What was once a sacred flame became a flicker in the wind. Wisdom, once revered as divine, became quaint, a relic of a slower age. The lost reverence. Looking back, one sees that every civilization that respected wisdom achieved depth and balance. When societies listened to their philosophers, poets, and saints, they built lasting cultures. When they silenced them, they fell into chaos or tyranny. The pattern is ancient and repeating. When wisdom is forgotten, stupidity rises to fill the void. Today, as we scroll through endless feeds of superficiality, we stand at another civilizational crossroads. The reverence for wisdom that once built temples, universities, and libraries has been replaced by the worship of immediacy. Yet understanding this history reminds us that reverence can be restored. We have been wise before, we can be wise again. The rise of mass media and the cult of entertainment. If the ancient world revered wisdom, and the early modern world pursued reason, then the modern world worships entertainment. What began as a means of storytelling and information sharing has evolved into a vast machine designed to captivate, distract, and manipulate the human mind. Mass media has replaced the temple, the academy, and the agora, and its new priests are not philosophers but entertainers. The age of media did not kill wisdom overnight. It began subtly, with good intentions, to inform, to connect, to democratize knowledge. But over time the mission shifted. Information became entertainment, truth became opinion, and the goal of communication ceased to be enlightenment. It became engagement. The birth of the spectacle. The modern obsession with spectacle began with the advent of newspapers and radio in the 19th and early 20th centuries. For the first time in history, ideas could travel faster than people. News was no longer local, it was global. But along with this power came a dangerous incentive. Attention sells. Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst, pioneers of American journalism, realized that sensational stories attracted more readers than thoughtful ones. Thus was born yellow journalism, news designed not to inform but to excite. Truth was no longer sacred. What mattered was what people would buy. The philosopher Guy Debord, in his 1967 classic, The Society of the Spectacle, warned that modern life would soon become dominated by appearances rather than realities. He wrote, "Everything that was once directly lived has become mere representation." His prophecy came true. The spectacle, whether political drama, celebrity scandal, or viral video, became the main form of cultural experience. People no longer sought wisdom, they sought distraction. The masses were not deceived, they were entertained into stupidity. Television and the dumbing of the mind. The rise of television in the mid-20th century marked the next great shift. The screen became the new altar, and the image replaced the word. Unlike books or discussions, television demanded no imagination, no interpretation, only passive absorption. As media theorist Neil Postman argued in Amusing Ourselves to Death, 1985, television transformed public discourse into entertainment. Politics became performance, education became infotainment, religion became televangelism. In a world ruled by screens, seriousness became a liability. Postman observed that in Orwell's 1984, people were controlled by fear, but in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, they were controlled by pleasure, and he concluded that Huxley was right. The modern person does not resist oppression because they are too amused to notice it. Television created a culture where brevity replaced depth, the soundbite replaced the argument, and charisma replaced competence. The wise, who spoke slowly and carefully, could not compete with the flashy and loud. The philosopher was no match for the talk show host. The celebrity is the new philosopher. In ancient times, the philosopher was the moral guide of society. In the modern world, that role belongs to the celebrity. Fame, not wisdom, is now the ultimate form of validation. To be seen is to exist. The rise of Hollywood and the entertainment industry transformed fame into a secular religion. Actors, musicians, and influencers became cultural prophets, not because they offered insight, but because they commanded attention. The modern celebrity embodies the triumph of image over substance. This shift has had profound consequences. When visibility becomes the highest virtue, people no longer aspire to be good or wise, they aspire to be noticed. The question is no longer what kind of person are you, but how many people know your name. In such a culture, stupidity often becomes an asset. The foolish, the reckless, the outrageous, they attract attention precisely because they break the norms of seriousness and restraint. The thoughtful are ignored, the absurd go viral. As a result, society rewards spectacle over substance, emotion over reason, performance over principle. Media and the manipulation of the mass mind. Mass media does not simply entertain, it shapes consciousness. It defines what is normal, desirable, and true. The philosopher Marshall McLuhan famously said, "The medium is the message," meaning that every new form of media reshapes human perception. Television trained people to think in fragments. Social media has trained them to react without thinking at all. The constant flow of images and updates rewires the brain for immediacy. Long-term focus, reflection, and deep comprehension, the cornerstones of wisdom, atrophy like unused muscles. Moreover, media's economic model depends on stimulation, not education. The more emotional you feel, angry, excited, envious, the longer you stay engaged. Thus, algorithms favor content that provokes reaction over content that inspires thought. Outrage and absurdity dominate because they keep you watching. In this way, stupidity becomes profitable. The wise message, calm, reasoned, and nuanced, cannot compete in such an environment. It does not fit the rhythm of the feed. As a result, truth becomes a whisper in a carnival of noise. The entertainment of politics and the politics of entertainment. Perhaps nowhere is the corruption of wisdom more visible than in politics. Modern political discourse has been reduced to theatre. Debates are staged for spectacle, not substance. Leaders are chosen for charisma, not competence. In the age of television and social media, image outweighs policy. The politician has become a performer, and the voter a fan. Complex issues are simplified into slogans. The art of governance has turned into the art of manipulation. As political scientist Daniel Boorstin noted in The Image, a guide to pseudo-events in America, we now live in a world of pseudo-events, carefully staged realities designed for media consumption. The truth no longer matters as much as the illusion of truth. Wisdom, slow, careful, and unglamorous, has no place in such a theatre. The world prefers spectacle to substance, applause to insight. The philosopher king of Plato's dreams has been replaced by the celebrity politician. The mass mind and the death of reflection. Mass media, by design, rewards conformity. It turns individual minds into a collective hive of reactions. In the past, wisdom was a solitary pursuit, a journey of thought and self-awareness. Today, the individual who pauses to think risks being left behind. The constant stream of news, entertainment, and notifications leaves no space for silence. Reflection feels like boredom, and boredom feels like death. We have become addicted to stimulation, unable to endure quiet moments where wisdom might arise. As a result, society has produced a new kind of ignorance. Not the ignorance of lacking information, but the ignorance of never thinking deeply about anything. We know everything, and understand nothing. The cultural cost of the spectacle. The rise of mass media has not only shaped our minds, but also our values. When every form of human expression is filtered through entertainment, seriousness itself becomes suspect. The wise appear out of place in a world that measures value by views. The philosopher, once a public figure of respect, is now mocked as pretentious. The intellectual is seen as elitist. The artist who seeks depth is told to make it viral. In the spectacle society, wisdom is bad business. And yet, beneath the noise, a quiet hunger remains. The soul still longs for meaning, even as it scrolls for distraction. The death of wisdom is not absolute. It is simply drowned beneath the flood of entertainment. But the tide can change if we learn once again to value silence over applause.